When my son told me I was not welcome in his home for Christmas, I smiled politely, walked out to my truck, and made a single phone call. Before the new year arrived, their mortgage payments no longer existed, and that was only the first move. I have always believed that balance has to be restored in life, and unchecked arrogance eventually demands a price. What happened next still surprises people when they hear it. "I could cook my turkey again this year," I said, leaning back into the deep cushions of Daniel's leather sofa. "The one with the sage stuffing your mother adored. You remember how she used to joke that it put her grandmother's recipe to shame?" The sentence lingered in the cozy room, blending with the sweet smell of lavender candles Claire liked to light in every corner. Daniel shifted beside me, and the band on his finger flashed under the glow of their towering Christmas tree, easily 12 feet tall. His posture changed in a way I knew too well, shoulders tightening as if he was preparing himself for bad news. "Dad, unfortunately, you are not going to be welcome here for Christmas." The words struck me so hard they felt physical. I blinked, certain I had misunderstood him. "What are you saying?" I asked. "Why would I not be welcome?" Daniel refused to look at me. His eyes stayed locked on the glass coffee table, the same one I had helped him choose earlier that year after Claire decided their old furniture made the house look cheap. "Claire's parents are coming," he said quietly, "and they would rather you not be here." My fingers went numb. "They would rather?" I repeated. "It just makes things simpler, Dad. You know how her family is with traditions. They have their own way of doing holidays." Each sentence came out weaker than the last, like he was folding in on himself. I slowly scanned the room. The custom drapes I paid for when Claire complained about neighbors looking in. The hardwood floors financed with a second loan in my name. The crown molding that had pushed my credit card to its limit. That house was built on my effort, my sacrifices, and my love for my son. "Their own way," I said carefully. "And what way is that, Daniel?" He flinched. "Please do not turn this into a fight." Through the open doorway to the kitchen, I spotted Claire's latest obsession, a professional KitchenAid mixer she swore she needed for holiday baking. It had cost nearly $2,000 of my money, and had probably been used twice since October. "So where exactly am I supposed to spend Christmas?" I asked. My voice came out softer than I intended. Daniel's face tightened. "Maybe you could visit your sister in Oakview, or maybe we could celebrate the weekend after." The weekend after. As if Christmas were just another calendar event that could be shifted for convenience. I stood, joints aching after years of carrying this family on my back alone. "I understand," I said. "Dad, wait," he called. I did not stop. I walked past the family photos where my presence faded more with each passing year, past the coat closet filled with Claire's designer jackets. I wrapped my hand around the doorknob, cold and solid beneath my palm. "Tell Claire's parents I said Merry Christmas," I said, without turning around. The winter air outside slapped my face as I headed toward my truck. Behind me, Daniel called my name once, then the door shut with a final unmistakable click. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment without starting the engine, staring at the glow of Christmas lights in windows I would never be invited into. My phone buzzed. I assumed it was Daniel, already trying to soften the blow with apologies that meant nothing. I ignored it. Instead, I turned the key and drove away, leaving behind the warmth of a house I had paid for but would never truly belong to. The heater rattled as I steered through the cold streets toward home. Westbrook spread out around me, every intersection tied to memories of the man I used to be. The man who believed family came before everything else, who would sacrifice anything to make his son happy. That man was naive. I stopped at the red light at Pine and 42nd, watching a young father load wrapped gifts into his SUV. His children pressed their faces against the glass, fogging it with excitement. Once, that had been Daniel and me, long before Claire entered the picture, long before I became nothing more than a personal bank account with inconvenient feelings. The numbers replayed in my head like a broken machine. $2,600 a month for 5 straight years. When I finally added it all up the previous spring, the total came out to $135,000, more money than my wife Elena and I had ever set aside for retirement. All of it gone, vanished into a life where I no longer had a place. I pressed down on the accelerator harder than I needed to as the light flipped to green. The engine growled in response, low and irritated, echoing exactly how I felt inside. I turned onto Cedar Avenue, the street where I had refinanced my home. Our home, Elena's and mine, to cover Daniel and Claire's down payment. I remembered the loan officer clearly. He had leaned back in his chair and studied me with a look I only understood much later. "Mr. Ramirez," he had said carefully, "are you absolutely certain about this? You are taking on significant risk for an investment that is not yours." An investment, not my son's future, not family security, someone else's investment. 2 blocks later, I passed Hawthorne Street, where the downtown branch of the bank sat. That was where I had signed the paperwork for a second mortgage after Daniel lost his job 2 years earlier. "It is just temporary, Dad," he had promised, "only until I get back on my feet." Claire had stood slightly behind him that day, nodding with practiced sympathy. A $700 handbag hung from her arm, while she quietly assessed how much my panic could be leveraged. As it turned out, my desperation carried no value at all. It was worth nothing to them. I pulled into my driveway, the same cracked slab of concrete I had never repaired because every spare dollar vanished into their polished suburban life. The porch light flickered weakly, another problem I kept postponing. Inside, the house felt empty in a way it never had before, hollow without Elena's laughter, without the warmth of family gatherings that now existed only in memory. My phone rang as I struggled with my keys. The sharp sound echoed through the silent rooms. Claire's name lit up the screen. I assumed she wanted to explain why I failed to meet her parents' refined standards. The timing was almost poetic. I had waited years for this conversation. I answered on the 4th ring, letting the pause stretch just long enough to make her uncomfortable. "David," she said, her voice coated in artificial sweetness, the same tone she used whenever she needed me to cover a utility bill or property taxes. "I heard there was a small misunderstanding with Daniel." "A misunderstanding?" I leaned against the kitchen counter, coat still on. "I do not think anything was misunderstood, Claire. Your position was very clear." "I know it feels harsh," she replied, "but you have to see this from my parents' point of view. They are very traditional. They expect a certain environment during the holidays." "A certain environment," I repeated. "And what exactly does that mean?" She hesitated. In the background, I heard shopping bags rustling, the sound of money being spent freely, money that was supposedly my responsibility to replace. "Well," she continued, "they're not used to your style of food. All that spicy Mexican cooking, the loud music. And honestly, David, they are educated people. They enjoy conversations about politics, literature, art. You understand?" The words landed heavier than a punch. 8 years of silence on my part, 8 years of swallowing comments and ignoring looks, meant to remind me I did not belong. My style of food? I asked evenly. You mean the meals you ate every Sunday for 3 years when things were tight? The tamales, you said, reminded you of your grandmother. That was different, she said quickly. We were grateful then, but now, with my parents, now that your parents are involved, you cannot have the Mexican laborer humiliating you at your dinner table. The sweetness vanished instantly. Do not be dramatic, she snapped. This is not about race, it is about class. My father graduated at the top of his class from a private university. My mother speaks 4 languages. They spend summers in Cape Cod. What exactly would you add to the conversation? Stories about laying tile? Heat surged through my chest, but I kept my voice controlled. I built a company from nothing after your husband's grandfather passed away, I said. I have employed more than 50 people. I have paid more in taxes than your father earned in his best year. Money is not everything, she replied coldly. Breeding matters, education matters, and Elena understood her place better than you seem to understand yours. The line went silent. That was the moment she crossed a boundary I did not even realize existed until it was gone. What did you just say about my wife? I asked. I am only saying she blended in better, Claire replied. She did not cause discomfort. She understood that some spaces were not meant for her. My grip tightened around the phone until my fingers ached. Elena had more dignity in her smallest finger than your entire lineage will ever manage, I said. She laughed softly. Please. She was a house cleaner who got lucky. At least she had the sense not to advertise it. Something in my voice changed when I spoke again. Listen carefully, Claire. This conversation is over. We are done pretending to be a family. You cannot just... We are finished, I said, and ended the call. I placed the phone down gently on the counter. My hands were steady, which surprised me. The kitchen felt different now, quieter, lighter, as if a pressure I had carried for years had finally lifted. I walked over to the small desk in the corner and pulled out the manila folder I had been avoiding for months. Inside were bank statements and mortgage documents, 5 years of automatic transfers that drained me dry while they lived comfortably. It was time to stop the bleeding. I spread the papers across the kitchen table like evidence laid out for trial. Statement after statement showed the same transaction, month after month. $2,600 withdrawn on the 15th every single time, transferred straight into their account. 5 years of proof, a detailed record of my generosity, and a clear map of my own foolishness. I pulled my calculator closer and began adding the numbers 1 line at a time. The first year alone wiped out more than $30,000. The second year matched it almost exactly. By the third year, I had stopped buying myself new clothes entirely, convincing myself I did not need anything new anyway. During the 4th year, I switched to discount grocery stores and generic brands. By this 5th year, I was eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch just to keep my head above water. By the time I finished, the total sat just under $150,000, and that was being generous. That number did not include the down payment I had covered. It did not include the months I paid their utilities when Claire's shopping habits got out of control. It did not include the roof replacement, the landscaping upgrades, or the furniture she claimed was essential for their image. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the figures until they blurred together. Elena's life insurance payout, my retirement savings, the college fund we had started for grandchildren, I now realized I might never be allowed to see. Every dollar had been funneled into a house where I was not even welcome for Christmas dinner. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found my bank. The automated system greeted me and politely offered service in both English and Spanish. The irony was not lost on me. "Customer service, this is Melissa," a woman said calmly. "How may I assist you today?" "I need to cancel an automatic transfer," I replied. My voice sounded steadier than it had in years. "Of course, sir. I will need your account number and a few verification details." I gave her the information and listened as she typed, professional and efficient. There was no judgment in her tone, no curiosity about why a man my age was making monthly payments toward what was clearly someone else's mortgage. "I see the transfer you are referring to, Mr. Ramirez," she said. $2,600 per month to a Wells Fargo account, ending in 3916. How long has this transfer been active?" 5 years, I said. The words left a bitter taste. "And you would like this canceled effective immediately?" I looked around my kitchen. The outdated appliances I could not replace. The peeling paint I had learned to ignore. The draft sneaking in through old windows because every home improvement dollar went into someone else's dream house. "Effective immediately," I confirmed. "All right, the transfer has been canceled. Is there anything else I can help you with today?" "No," I said, surprised by how satisfying the word felt. "That is everything." I ended the call and sat there in the silence of my house. Outside, December darkness settled over Riverton, lights glowing in windows where families gathered freely, without conditions, without measuring worth. For the first time in 5 years, my next month's budget would actually balance. For the first time since Elena passed, I could fix my porch light, buy decent food, maybe even plan a small trip. I gathered the bank statements and mortgage papers, every piece of evidence documenting my generosity, then carried them to the fireplace. I struck a match and watched 5 years of sacrifice curl and blacken into ash. The warmth from the fire touched my face, warmer than I had felt in a very long time. My phone buzzed with a message. I assumed it was Daniel trying to apologize, or Claire asking for money for something urgent, like new decorative pillows. I did not check it. Instead, I poured myself a glass of the good whiskey, the bottle I had been saving for a milestone that never seemed to arrive. Tonight felt close enough. I lifted the glass toward the empty room, toward Elena's photograph on the mantel, toward the man I used to be, and the one I was finally becoming. "Merry Christmas to me," I said aloud, and I meant it. The next morning broke cold and bright. Pale winter sunlight poured through my kitchen windows as I finished my second cup of coffee. For the first time in years, I was not calculating how much money would vanish from my account in a few days. That sense of freedom tasted better than the premium coffee I had finally allowed myself to buy. At exactly 10:47 in the morning, my phone rang. Claire's name lit up the screen like a warning sign. "David," she said, her voice sharp with impatience, "I need you to pick up my parents from Riverton International Airport. Their flight from Boise lands at 2 o'clock. I set my mug down slowly and watched the steam rise. "Claire," I said calmly, "did you somehow forget our conversation yesterday? Whatever that was about, it is not relevant right now," she replied. "We need to focus on practical things. My parents need transportation, and you are the only one with free time during the day." The nerve of it left me almost speechless. Less than a day after telling me I was unfit to sit at her holiday table, she expected me to act as her personal driver. "And you are asking me because," I prompted. "Because that is what family does," she snapped. "They help each other. And let us be honest, David, you are not my rival. You are too weak to be my rival. So just get in your truck and go." There it was. The final insult, delivered like an order. "What airline?" I asked quietly. "Alaska Airlines, Flight 447, she said. "They will be at baggage claim Carousel 3. and make sure you can handle their luggage properly. Do not embarrass us." I could hear her fingernails tapping against stone, probably the granite countertop I had paid for, when she decided laminate was beneath her standards. "Of course," I said evenly. "I will handle everything." "Good," Claire replied, "and wear something respectable. Maybe that blue button-down you wore to Daniel's graduation. My parents notice details like that." The call ended without a thank you. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the dark screen of my phone. 2:00, Alaska Airlines Flight 447. Baggage claim carousel 3. I glanced up at the clock above my kitchen sink. It read 10:52 in the morning. I had plenty of time. I poured myself another cup of coffee, adding an extra spoonful of sugar for once, and unfolded yesterday's newspaper to the crossword puzzle I had left unfinished. 7 across read, "Delayed gratification, 12 letters." I stared at it, knowing the answer would come eventually. At 2:15 in the afternoon, I was comfortably settled into my favorite armchair with a fresh cup of Earl Grey tea and the Sunday edition of the Riverton Review. The crossword lay completed on my coffee table. The answer had been postponement. Fitting. My phone buzzed against the wood. Claire's name flashed again. I let it ring. The December sunlight slanted through my living room windows, warming the space where I had spent so many evenings alone, silently tallying the cost of my generosity. Today, the quiet felt different. It felt intentional, earned. At 2:47, the phone buzzed again. This time, I caught a glimpse of the message preview. "David, where are you? My parents are." I flipped the phone face down and returned to the sports section. The Seahawks had lost again. Some things, apparently, never changed. By 3:30, my phone had buzzed 6 times. I had finished the paper, brewed a second pot of tea, and started organizing the junk drawer in my kitchen. It was amazing how much time I suddenly had when I was no longer rushing to serve people who treated me like their personal errand runner. The 7th call came at 3:45. Instead of Claire's name, the screen showed an unknown number. I assumed her parents had borrowed someone's phone at the airport. I ignored that one, too. Outside, a neighbor was stringing Christmas lights along his porch, while his kids ran circles around the yard, fueled by that restless energy only December afternoons seemed to bring. Normal families, normal moments. No one waiting helplessly for someone who would never show up. At 4:15, my phone started ringing non-stop. Claire. Then the unknown number. Then Claire again. The vibration grew constant, like an angry insect trapped under glass. I walked into the kitchen and unplugged my landline from the wall. Then I powered my cell phone completely off. Silence. I made myself a grilled cheese sandwich and heated a can of tomato soup, the kind of comfort meal I had denied myself for months. Every grocery dollar had gone toward keeping their household afloat, while mine quietly fell apart. The cheese melted to a perfect golden brown. The soup steamed in my favorite mug. Outside, the winter sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across my backyard. Somewhere across town, 3 people were probably standing in a parking garage, arguing about taxi fare and wondering how their unpaid driver had dared to abandon them. The thought made the soup taste even better. By 5 o'clock, I had eaten, cleaned up, and started debating which movie to watch. It had been years since I had an entire evening to myself without dreading a call, asking for money or favors. I had just reached for the remote when someone began slamming their fists against my front door, not knocking, pounding, the kind of furious assault that shook the frame and announced pure rage. I set my tea down and walked calmly toward the noise, already certain who was on the other side. The pounding intensified as I approached, each hit louder and more aggressive. Through the peephole, I saw 3 figures packed onto my small porch, crowding the space like predators closing in. I opened the door. Cody Jenkins's flushed face was inches from mine. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he yelled, shoving past me into my living room without permission. "We waited at that damn airport for over 3 hours. Catherine followed, her usually flawless hair disheveled, her lips drawn tight with contempt. "This is completely unacceptable behavior from someone your age, David. Absolutely primitive." Claire came in last. Her designer coat was wrinkled, her makeup smeared, her composure gone. "You humiliated us," she snapped. "Do you have any idea what you have done? My parents had to take a $40 taxi because you decided to get out of my house." My voice cut cleanly through their shouting. They froze mid-sentence, stunned by the firmness in my tone. "Excuse me," Coatney barked, his face darkening. "You do not get to make demands after what you pulled today." "This is my home," I said quietly, holding my ground near the door. "And I want all of you out. Now." Catherine stepped forward, her voice dripping with the polished superiority she had mastered over decades. "David, you clearly do not understand the scale of your mistake. My husband has extensive connections in this city, business connections, social connections. You cannot treat people like us this way and expect—" "This was a lesson," I interrupted, meeting her gaze without blinking. "A lesson about arrogance and how you treat people you believe are beneath you." Claire's mouth fell open. "A lesson? Who do you think you are? You are nobody. You are just a—" "I am someone who finally stopped being your personal bank account and your free transportation." I stepped aside and opened the door wider, holding it there in silence. "The lesson is finished," I said calmly. "You can leave now." Cody jabbed a finger toward my chest, but stopped just short of touching me. "You have no idea who you are dealing with, old man," he snapped. "I have been part of this city longer than you have been breathing its air. I know people, important people, people who can make your life extremely unpleasant." I met his stare without moving. "Is that a threat, Mr. Jenkins?" "It is a promise," he replied, lowering his voice into something sharp and deliberate. "You think stranding older people at an airport is something you can get away with? You're about to find out how wrong you are." Catherine nodded beside him, her smile thin and razor-edged. "Actions always have consequences, David, and yours will not be handled quietly." Claire grabbed her father's arm, clearly impatient. "Dad, let us go. This pathetic old man is not worth the effort." They marched out of my house in a tight group, but Cody stopped at the doorway and turned back one last time. "You will regret this," he said. "I guarantee it." I closed the door behind them and slid the deadbolt into place, the solid click echoing through the house. Through the front window, I watched them cram into their rental car, still arguing as they pulled away and disappeared into the December night. The house felt lighter once they were gone, as if their presence had left a residue that was finally lifting. Still, their final words lingered in the silence. Public consequences, powerful connections, important people. I walked back into the living room and picked up my tea. Still warm. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt a flicker of concern. It was quickly overtaken by something stronger. Anticipation. 3 days later, I was drinking my morning coffee and skimming the Riverton Review when my hands froze. There, on page 3, was my own face staring back at me. The headline read, "Local businessman abandons elderly couple at airport during holiday storm." The photo was an old one pulled from my company website, at least 5 years out of date. Beneath it was a story that made my stomach tighten and my anger rise at the same time. Cody and Catherine Jenkins, visiting their daughter for the holidays, were left stranded at Riverton International Airport for more than 4 hours on Sunday when family member David Ramirez failed to arrive for a prearranged pickup. The article read, "The couple, both in their late 50s, waited in frigid conditions as a winter storm warning was issued for the region." A winter storm warning. It had been 52 degrees and clear skies. We could not believe someone would simply abandon us. Cody Jenkins, identified as a retired banking executive, was quoted as saying, "We called repeatedly, but Mr. Ramirez never answered. We were forced to take an expensive taxi in dangerous weather. At our age, that kind of treatment is not just inconsiderate, it is dangerous." The article went on to describe a supposed pattern of erratic behavior and included vague concerns about my mental stability. Cody had carefully painted himself and Catherine as helpless victims, mistreated by a bitter old man who had snapped without warning. There was no mention of the Christmas dinner exclusion, no reference to Claire's demands, no acknowledgement of the years of financial support I had provided. Just a neat narrative where I was the villain who abandoned innocent elderly visitors during a blizzard that never existed. I set my coffee down and reread the article once, then again, then a third time. The byline read, "Patricia Morrison, Feature's editor." I did not recognize the name, but I recognized the tactic. Cody had pulled strings, leveraged old banking relationships, and placed the story exactly where it would cause the most damage. It was clever, very clever. For the first time, I felt a grudging respect for them. They were not just spoiled, entitled people throwing a fit. They were methodical, strategic. They understood that in a city like Riverton, reputation was currency. One well-positioned article could undo decades of honest work. They had not just complained. They had declared war. I folded the newspaper neatly and set it aside. My mind shifted automatically into the same disciplined, analytical mode that had allowed me to build my company from nothing. This was no longer about airport pickups. It was no longer about Christmas dinner. It was no longer about mortgage payments. This was about winning. I opened my laptop and began typing names into search engines. Cody Jenkins, Catherine Jenkins, Claire Ramirez, their social media accounts, their affiliations, their habits, their public statements, every trace they had carelessly left behind over the years. If they wanted to play chess, I would show them what a real strategist looked like. I glanced at the calendar on my wall. December 18th. 7 days until Christmas. 7 days to plan something they would never forget. Over the next 3 days, I lived in a different reality. Not the one where I was David Ramirez, the worn-down older man who had allowed his family to exploit his loyalty. This was the world where I was David Ramirez, businessman, planner, survivor, a man who had spent 40 years building something solid and was not about to let a handful of arrogant parasites tear it down. My laptop became command central. Social media pages filled my browser like cards laid out on a casino table, every profile another hand waiting to be played. Cody Jenkins appeared first. Retired regional bank manager, former vice president at First Valley Financial, board member of the Riverton Country Club, treasurer of the Mid-State Business Leadership Council, a man whose entire career was built on trust, credibility, and reputation, a man with a great deal to lose if those things were questioned. Catherine's Instagram was a carefully polished illusion of refinement. Charity luncheons, wine tastings, weekend getaways to lakeside resorts, tagged with captions like, "Grateful and blessed life," every photo curated to project elegance and success. Friends filled the comments with praise for her taste and lifestyle, never questioning where the money came from, money that, in more cases than they realized, had come straight from me. Claire's Facebook page told a less flattering story. Photos of our beautiful home, including close-ups of the kitchen I had paid for, check-ins at high-end restaurants during the same months I had covered their heating bills. A status update from the previous week caught my attention immediately. So excited to host Christmas dinner for family and friends. Cannot wait to show off our home, our hosting skills, our success. The entitlement was staggering, but it was Daniel's LinkedIn profile that finally completed the picture. Under his recent activity, I saw a new professional connection, Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor at the Riverton Review. The same Patricia Morrison who had written the article portraying me as an unstable old man. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen, the pieces locking into place. They had made 3 serious mistakes. First, they had underestimated me completely. Second, they had taken their attack public, which meant I was free to respond in the same arena. Third, they had documented their entire privileged existence online, creating a detailed archive of hypocrisy. I clicked into Patricia Morrison's profile, 43 years old, journalism degree from State University, 15 years bouncing between regional papers, no background in banking or finance, no obvious personal connection to the Jenkins family, which meant Cody had reached out through his network. A quick search through local business directories confirmed it. 3 shared connections between Cody and Patricia's managing editor. The article had not happened by chance. It had been placed deliberately, nudged into existence by influence and favors. Sloppy. Predictable. I opened a new document and began building something far more effective than a rebuttal. I started a timeline. 5 full years of financial support, laid out in clean, undeniable order. The down payment on their house, $47,000 taken from my home equity loan. The kitchen renovation when Claire decided granite counters were non-negotiable. $18,000 charged to my credit card. 60 consecutive mortgage payments at $2,600 each. $156,000 transferred directly from my account into theirs. Utilities, property taxes, emergency repairs, furniture, landscaping. By the time I finished, the total exceeded $250,000, more money than I had spent on myself in the last 10 years combined. My phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. I assumed Claire was trying a new tactic. I ignored it and kept working. By evening, everything was assembled inside a thick manila folder. Bank statements, receipts, copies of canceled checks, printed screenshots of social media posts proudly displaying purchases I had funded. A hard copy of the newspaper article sat on top, my red pen notes crowding the margins. False, misleading, fabricated, missing context. I glanced at the calendar on my wall. December 24th was circled in red, not because it was Christmas Eve, but because it was perfect. According to Claire's public event page, they were hosting Christmas dinner for 12 guests. Family friends, neighbors, people from their social circle. The kind of people who read the Riverton Review and formed opinions quickly. The kind of people who deserved to know the truth before dessert was served. I shut my laptop and walked into the kitchen, where my good camera sat on the counter. The same camera I used for documenting job sites when I ran my company. It was time to document something else. Christmas Eve morning arrived gray and cold, the kind of winter day that made warm homes and family gatherings feel especially valuable. Too bad I had been disqualified from both. I spread my materials across the dining table like an attorney preparing for trial. Bank statements sorted by year, each monthly payment highlighted, receipts arranged chronologically, revealing a clear pattern of dependence, social media photos printed in full color, showcasing jewelry, vacations, decorations, and upgrades funded by my sacrifices. I made 12 identical packets, one for every dinner guest. Each stack was topped with the newspaper article, my handwritten annotations visible at a glance. Lie circled next to claims of dangerous weather. False, written beside accusations about my mental state. Omitted, scrawled in red where 5 years of financial support should have been mentioned. When I finished, I stood back and looked at the table. Everything was ready. They had chosen Christmas to humiliate me. I had chosen Christmas Eve to tell the truth. I dressed with intention that evening, choosing my best suit, a navy one I had last worn to Elena's funeral. It was pressed, immaculate, and heavy with symbolism. That day, I had said goodbye to my wife. Tonight I was saying goodbye to the version of myself who had allowed his family to walk all over him. When the night ended, I would be someone else entirely. At 6:30 in the evening, I loaded my briefcase with the prepared evidence packets and drove toward Riverbend Heights. Their house was glowing when I arrived, warm light spilling through the windows. Cars packed the driveway and lined the street. Through the front glass, I could see people moving around the dining room, Claire smiling and gesturing as she played the perfect hostess in a home my money had helped secure. I parked across the street and checked my watch. 6:45 p.m. Perfect. Late enough that everyone would be seated. Early enough that dinner was still underway. No easy exits, no polite excuses. The front door was unlocked, just as I expected. Claire loved boasting about how safe their neighborhood was, how people like them did not need locks or security systems like those in less desirable areas. I stepped inside quietly. Warm air hit my face, along with laughter drifting from the dining room, and then Catherine said, "But darling, that is simply not how our family does things." Someone said, followed by amused laughter, "Our family," after everything they had done to keep me out of it. I walked into the dining room with my briefcase in hand. 12 faces turned toward me at once, reactions ranging from confusion to outright fear. Claire froze with her wineglass halfway to her lips. Daniel's color drained instantly. Cody and Catherine stared as if they were looking at a ghost. "Good evening," I said calmly, setting my briefcase down on the marble sideboard. "I hope I am not interrupting your Christmas celebration." Claire recovered first. "David, this is wildly inappropriate," she snapped. "You need to leave immediately." "Actually," I said, opening my briefcase and removing the first stack of documents, "I believe your guests deserve to know who paid for this dinner, this house, and the lifestyle you have been so proud to display." A woman I did not recognize, likely one of Catherine's charity friends, leaned forward. "What is he talking about, Claire?" "He is confused," Claire said quickly. "Michael, call someone." But I was already moving around the table, placing a neatly assembled packet in front of each guest. "These are bank records," I said conversationally. 5 years of financial support, 60 monthly mortgage payments of $2,600 each. That alone comes to $156,000. That does not include the down payment, renovations, appliances, furniture, or utilities. The room fell silent except for the soft rustle of paper as 12 people began reading. I watched their expressions change as the numbers sank in. Dates, account statements, highlighted transfers, proof that could not be argued away. "This is one man began, stopping mid-sentence as he stared at a page. "Outrageous," finished the woman across from him. "Claire, why were we never told any of this?" Claire's composure finally began to crack. "It is more complicated than it looks. David offered to help us. We never asked for—" "Actually," I said, pulling out copies of the newspaper article, "let us talk about what you did ask for, and what you chose to tell the press about me." The temperature in the room dropped instantly. I placed the article in front of each guest. Several of them recognized my face immediately. "Now," I continued, my voice steady and clear, "let us talk about the real manipulation happening in this family." Cody's face had turned gray. Catherine sat rigid, her wine glass untouched in her hand. "Mr. Jenkins used his banking connections to place this article," I said, tapping the headline. "I am portrayed as unstable and dangerous, supposedly abandoning helpless elderly strangers in freezing conditions." A gray-haired man in an expensive sweater looked up sharply. "Cody, what is this?" The weather that day was 52 degrees and sunny, I said before Cody could speak. And they were not tourists. They were Claire's parents, arriving for a Christmas dinner I was forbidden to attend because I was deemed unfit for their company. Catherine finally spoke. "That is not what we said. We never—" "Never said what?" I asked, pulling out my phone and turning the screen toward the table. "That I was too low class for your family. That my food, my background, and my conversation would embarrass you." The woman I recognized from Catherine's charity events shifted uncomfortably. "Catherine, surely that cannot be true." Cody tried to regain control. "He is twisting things. This man has mental health issues, stress, aging, financial instability." "Financial instability?" I said, letting out a short, humorless laugh. "I have been funding your daughter's life to the tune of nearly $3,000 a month for 5 years. The only financial instability here is about to be yours." I turned to face the entire table, every eye locked on me now. "They took over $200,000 from me," I said evenly, my voice carrying through the room, all while mocking me behind my back. "They drove a wedge between me and my son, excluded me from family events, and the moment I stopped letting them use me, they tried to destroy my reputation in the press." Daniel spoke. For the first time since I arrived, his voice barely audible. "Dad, I did not know about the newspaper article." "Your wife did," I replied calmly, "and her parents planned it. They decided I should be painted as a villain because I refused to keep being their bank account and free transportation." The atmosphere around the table shifted, subtle but undeniable. I could see it in the guests' expressions as realization set in. The story they had been told about generous hosts and an unstable old man was unraveling in real time. "This is disgraceful," said an elderly woman wearing pearls, staring down at the highlighted bank statements. "Cody, how could you allow your daughter to take advantage of this man's generosity and then publicly attack him when he finally stopped?" Cody's practiced confidence cracked. "You do not understand the entire situation." "I understand it perfectly," the woman shot back. "This man financially supported your family for years. You treated him like hired labor, and when he said no, you tried to ruin him." Catherine's voice came out strained. "He abandoned us at the airport. After you told me I was not welcome at Christmas dinner because my presence would be inappropriate for your parents," I said, keeping my tone steady. "After 5 years of paying their bills while you looked down on me for my background and education." The silence that followed was heavy. 12 people stared at Cody and Catherine with open discomfort, some with disgust, others clearly embarrassed by their association. Claire made one final attempt to regain control. "Everyone, please. This is a private family issue that has spiraled out of control. No, I said firmly. It stopped being private when you went public, when you used the newspaper to attack my character, when you decided my reputation was acceptable collateral for your pride. I looked around the table at faces I did not know personally, but who now knew exactly who I was. I wanted you to hear the truth before you read about me again. I continued, because you will read about me again, but next time it will be the full story. I closed my briefcase and adjusted my tie. Enjoy the rest of your dinner, I said. It is the last one I will ever finance. As I walked toward the door, the eruption began behind me. Raised voices, accusations, demands for explanations, the sound of a carefully crafted social image collapsing under its own lies. It was the finest Christmas music I had ever heard. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, sent by certified mail, heavy with legal finality. I signed for it at my front door, noticing how the air smelled of early spring and new beginnings instead of the cold desperation that had defined December. Notice of default. The envelope read, "Final demand for payment." Inside, 3 months of missed mortgage payments had finally caught up with Daniel and Claire. $8,400 past due. 14 days to bring the account current or foreclosure proceedings would begin on the house I had helped them buy. I set the letter aside and returned to my coffee, reading it the way one reads about weather in another state. Interesting, informational, no longer my concern. My phone had been ringing for weeks. Desperate calls, escalating voicemails. Claire's number had been blocked after the first hysterical message. Cody and Catherine's social standing in Riverton had evaporated after their Christmas dinner humiliation. Even Daniel had been calling, calls I ignored out of equal parts anger and curiosity about how long it would take him to swallow his pride. The answer turned out to be 97 days. He showed up at my door on a Thursday evening, no longer the confident man who had excluded me from Christmas dinner. He looked older, worn down. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His expensive suit was wrinkled. Desperation clung to him like cheap cologne. "Dad," he said quietly when I opened the door, "we need to talk." I stepped aside and let him in. As he entered, he glanced around my home, as if seeing it for the first time. The new furniture I had bought with my first mortgage-free paycheck. The freshly painted walls that had gone untouched for 8 years because every spare dollar had gone into his lifestyle. The repairs I could finally afford now that I was no longer subsidizing someone else's version of the American dream. "It looks nice," Daniel said quietly, glancing around my living room. "It is," I replied, easing back into my new recliner. That is what happens when you finally spend money on yourself instead of people who never appreciated it. "Would you like some coffee?" He shook his head and perched on the edge of the couch, sitting stiffly as if comfort were something he no longer felt entitled to. "Dad," he began, voice low, "I need you to know how sorry I am for everything. Christmas dinner, the article, the way Claire, the way we treated you." "Go on," I said calmly. "I swear I did not know about Cody planting that story," he said quickly. "I really did not. When I found out..." He ran both hands through his hair and exhaled hard. "God, Dad, the things they said about you behind your back, about our family, about Mom." My jaw tightened at the mention of Elena, but my voice stayed steady. "And what exactly did they say about your mother?" He could not look at me. "They said she understood her place better than you did, that she knew boundaries, that she knew where she belonged." "Yes," I said simply. "You should have." We sat in silence after that. 5 years of disappointment, excuses, and missed chances hung between us. Outside, A lawnmower droned in the distance, ordinary neighborhood sounds, the kind of normal life where sons did not exile their fathers from Christmas. "The house is in foreclosure," Daniel said at last. "I know. We cannot make the payments without—" He stopped, realizing what he was about to say. "Without my money," I finished. "Without the transfers I made every month while you allowed your wife's family to treat me like I was disposable." "I know how it sounds," he said quietly. I leaned forward so he had to meet my eyes. "Do you know how much money I sent you over those 5 years?" He nodded, defeated. Claire added it up after Christmas. Mortgage payments, the down payment, everything. More than $200,000. $237,468, I corrected. I know because I finally did something I should have done a long time ago. I counted. His face collapsed. "Dad, I am so sorry. I do not know how to fix this." "You cannot fix it," I said, not raising my voice. "That money is gone. But more importantly, those years are gone. 5 years I could have spent rebuilding a relationship with you instead of funding someone else's fantasy." "I know that now," he said. He looked up, hope flickering. "But maybe we could start over. Maybe there is a way. Are you asking me to start paying the mortgage again?" The hope vanished instantly. "We are going to lose everything," he said. "The house, Claire's respect, her parents' approval. I do not know what to do." "You will figure it out," I said evenly. "The same way I figured out how to live without a son who respected me. The same way I learned to spend Christmas alone while you celebrated with people who believed I was beneath them." He broke, then, crying quietly, the way a man does when there is nothing left to defend himself with. "I lost you, didn't I?" he asked. "I chose them over you, and now I have lost you forever." I studied him for a long moment. This was the child I had raised, loved, and sacrificed for, the man who had allowed others to convince him his father was not good enough. "Daniel," I said at last, "you did not lose me. You gave me away. There is a difference." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Is there any chance you could forgive me?" "I forgave you months ago," I said honestly. "But forgiveness does not mean going back to how things were. It does not mean pretending this never happened. And it does not mean I will resume paying for a life that required me to accept being treated like an inconvenience. Then what does it mean?" I stood and walked to the mantel. Elena's photo sat there, beside a newer one. Me at Easter dinner with my sister Rosa and her family, smiling in a room where I had been wanted. It means that if you want a relationship with me, you will have to build it from the ground up, I said. It means showing respect instead of expecting it. It means choosing what is right instead of what is convenient. I turned back to him. And it means that if your wife, her parents, or anyone else ever tries to exclude me again, you will remember who actually behaves like family. He nodded slowly, understanding finally, settling in. "The house?" he asked quietly. "Not my problem anymore." I sat back down, lighter than I had felt in years. "You are a grown man," I continued. "Figure it out like one. Get work that supports your life. Sell the house if you have to. Buy something you can afford. Stop living beyond your means and expecting someone else to pay the difference." He stood, shoulders straighter than when he arrived. "You are right," he said, "about all of it. I know." He reached the door, then turned back. "For what it is worth," he said, "watching you stand up for yourself at Christmas, I was embarrassed, angry, but I was proud too." "Good," I replied. "That means there may be hope for you yet." After he left, I poured myself a glass of the good whiskey and stepped onto my back porch. Spring was settling into Riverton, trees budding, air softening. In 4 months, I would turn 63. Elena had been gone for 8 years. I had wasted 5 of those years being used by people who never valued sacrifice. I was not wasting another one. My phone buzzed with a message from Rosa. "Dinner Sunday? The kids want to show you their school projects." I smiled and typed back, "I would not miss it." I finally understood that real family was not defined by obligation or blood alone. It was defined by who actually wanted you at the table. Everything else was just expensive theater, and I was done buying tickets to shows where I was never meant to stand on stage.